Relax, sit back as we fill your mind with spooky true crime stories of the deranged, unhinged, and absolute pure evil murders that will blow your mind. Some places we will visit to show you around and educate you on the history. Other times we will bring you to the paranormal because the dead never lie silent for too long. It will get you thinking, who is your neighbor, friend, or even your spouse? Who are you sleeping next to tonight? Could he be the next Ted Bundy? Welcome to the 50 States of Madness.
Welcome to 50 States of Madness.
Hi, good afternoon.
Hello. And last time we recorded, Shannon was very ill.
I was.
And then she was so kind as to give it to me.
Well, you know, sharing is caring.
Yeah.
So I did pass it on. I don't even remember being that close to you because I kind of tried to stay separate from you guys. But, you know, we are in the same room and we do have the air circulating.
Yeah.
So.
And I don't get sick very often. That's why I never.
That one was a kick-ass.
Yeah. I haven't been sick like that. I don't know the last time.
I didn't even know you were sick until I talked to you a week later. And you were telling me. And you
because I didn't. I knew you were busy with the kids, and so I didn't want to text you or whatever.
She says kids like they were little.
Well,
the adult grown children.
Yeah.
We were running around LA doing the California experience.
Yeah.
Here in our hometown.
I didn't want to bother you, but I couldn't call into work. I had to go to work. So I went to work. I came home and threw myself in bed every night. That was it.
I feel so bad. But so our story this week, we are going to continue, and it's not really a continuation because I know a few weeks ago we touched on the alphabet murders or the double initial, however they want to call it.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of like a blur as to what, because there was two different set of murders, some in California and Nevada with adults and some with the children in New York. So we did talk about the murders in New York with the three girls that had the same first and last initial on their name. And one of the suspects was Joseph Naso. And we kind of slightly like brushed over him a little bit as he was one of the suspects, but he actually was arrested and convicted on another set of murders. And so, and what the coincidence is these women, like the children, had the same first and last initial in their name. So on April 11, 2011, 77-year-old Joseph Naso, a New York native who lived in Rochester in the 1970s, was arrested in Reno, Nevada for 4 murders in California dating back to 1977. The victims were 18-year-old Roxene Roggasch, who was found dead on January 10, 1977, dumped near Fairfax, California; Carmen Colon, 22, an East Bay resident whose body was found in Contra Costa County on August 15, 1978, and who coincidentally had the same name as the young girl in Rochester, New York that we talked about in a previous episode; Pamela Parsons, 38, of Yuba County, whose body was found on September 19, 1993 in Yuba County; and Tracy Tafoya, 31, whose body was found on August 14, 1994 in Yuba County. All 4 women are described by authorities as prostitutes. Joseph Naso never stayed in one place for long. He was born in Rochester, New York in 1934. He served in the Air Force in the 1950s. He met his first wife, Judith, and got married and had a son, Charles. Years later, his son developed schizophrenia, and Naso would care for him. He actually fought for custody, and he actually was described as a very doting father on Charles. Like, he really, really cared for him. And so because of that, a lot of people were surprised by some of the things that he wrote about and that he did.
Yeah.
So after 18 years of marriage, Naso and Judith divorced, but he frequently visited her afterwards. He moved around the West Coast, living in the Bay Area and San Francisco, as well as Nevada. When he lived in California, he took classes at community colleges in Oakland in the mid-1970s. In the 1980s, he lived in San Francisco in the Mission District. It was during this time that Margaret Prisco and Thaddeus Iorrizo became all too familiar with their downstairs neighbor. Though they had limited contact with Naso, Thaddeus told the San Francisco Chronicle, Each time I crossed paths with him, the hair on my back and my neck would stand up. You'd get a really creepy feeling. He was pure evil. I'd say to myself, stay away from this guy. He's nuts. Thaddeus also said that he would come across Naso when he was taking out the trash. Naso's trash was filled with pornographic magazines featuring women in bondage, being tied up or tortured. Naso would later deny that they were his. In 1994, he was jailed on petty theft in Sutter County near Yuba City. In 1995, Naso was working as a freelance photographer when he strolled into an Oakland, California department store and attempted to shoplift 30 pairs of women's underwear.
Oh, wow.
I know. And I'm going through all this because you're going to see this history of crime. And it's all going to play into effect into how they caught him for the murders. In 1998, he began dating Mildred Gardner. She was 11 years older than he was and wealthy. But even though they seemed to have a great relationship in some ways, Mildred said that Naso was sneaky. Mildred successfully requested a restraining order against Naso and revealed that Naso had lied to her about money she had lent him. She had given him $10,000 to purchase a van to be used by both of them, but later learned that he put the title in his name only. And later, when his son was ill, he wanted to buy a house near the hospital where his son was staying and convinced her to pay $7,000 toward a house they were supposed to share together. Again, Naso had duped her and put the title in his name only. Mildred stated later that she gave Naso $17,000 because she thought he was going to marry her and the house and the van would belong to both of them. She said, he did not tell me that he had been arrested for many crimes, including swindling.
Swindling.
Thank you. It tells you
He's a
how
swindler.
He's a swindler. He did not tell me he was putting the house and van in his own name. I would not have given him any of this money if I had known the truth. All this time, Naso's temper began to be revealed. She said that she had become afraid of him. He started demanding very angrily that she get back everything she ever gave to anyone. He would not let up. He also forced her to give him a .38 caliber snub nose revolver. After becoming more suspicious, she and her family paid for a private investigator to research him and discovered that he had a criminal history. After that, all bets were off. Mildred stated, I'm not going to Sacramento to live with him. I'm afraid he will become violent when he finds out. Embarrassingly, Mildred had been convinced to take part in one of Naso's bondage photo shoots. One of the employees at the senior center where Naso and Mildred had met said that Naso had shown him a picture of Mildred in bondage gear. It didn't seem like something she'd do every day. She was not like that, the worker said. I was speechless. Naso was banned from the center after that. In 2003, he was arrested again for shoplifting at the local food co. in Sacramento before he moved from California to Nevada. In 2009, he was at it again, caught stealing at Rayleigh's grocery store in South Lake Tahoe. He was put on probation. Naso's whereabouts would later prove to be important. It was discovered that he was in the general vicinity of his alleged victims. The victims coincided with locations in California, Nevada, along with Cleveland, Kansas City, Buffalo, Rochester, Wichita, Berkeley, and even London.
Wow.
Yes. No, this man got around. They actually believe that there's way more victims than what he's been convicted of. So,
Oh, I'm sure.
yeah. Nobody stops for that long of periods in between.
No.
I mean,
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So,
Of course. So a chance visit on April 13th, 2010 from his parole officer, Wes Jackson, turned his life upside down. On parole from his most recent shoplifting charge, Naso was subject to unannounced home visits from his parole officer. What should have been routine turned into something else. Jackson noticed an ad for a gun and several rounds of ammunition tucked not so carefully away in an ashtray. The ammunition was in clear violation of Naso's parole, which gave officers carte blanche to scour his home. The house was cluttered and the bedrooms were locked from the outside. A plastic container of ammunition and knives were found. A bullet and a small advertisement for the sale of a gun were also found in his pocket. Police seized more than $152,000 in cash, weapons, women's clothing, newspaper clippings, mannequin legs, dolls, bullets, a $30,000 coin collection, and knives. In the course of their investigation, police found thousands of photographs of women in lingerie. In some cases, they were photographed wearing bondage gear. Naso's photos stemmed from shots in the 60s to more current years. In all, police said that there were over 4,000 images found in the freelance photographer's home. It was not clear if the women were actually lifeless or unconscious. The dark bruising and prominent veins on some victims, described as marbling, can be part of the decomposition process. The most creepy aspect of this discovery was that the women had been photographed to look dead. And we've seen this in other cases, but
there were so many photographs.
It's very disturbing. However, Naso's response to the photographs was that none of the photographs found depict the women shown in forced posing, forced bondage, or being deceased. All photographs of the women were posed under free will. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, well, he's saying like he was a freelance photographer, and they posed for him.
Yeah, but I don't know.
Some of them did not look like they do not look like posed. They look like they are unconscious.
Yeah, like take a picture of me. I'm gonna pretend that I'm dead. Like, that's not attractive. Yeah. Like, come on, women are too vain for that.
Yeah.
Police also located 2 safety deposit box keys in his upper dresser drawer. The U.S. Bank and Wells Fargo safety deposit boxes contained a small black purse, personal documentation of other women, passports, driver's license, newspaper articles, and more. Naso was recorded after his arrest asking his ex-wife to tell their son to break into his home and remove the keys before police found them. They also found a rape journal. This is what gets me. This is
crazy.
This is off the charts. A handwritten list which had the reference to 10 different women and 10 different locations. One was labeled Rochester 1958 and described picking up a gorgeous chick at a bus stop, where he headed for the cemetery and started to kiss and molest her. He went on to write, I had to force her down and hold her skirt up, her girdle down. It was hard work. The journal entries are explicitly violent and graphic. He ends the note with, to this day, I love her. I wish I could have married her. Naso was arrested for the women's rape in 1958. Another entry described offering a young girl a ride home in 1961. It reads, she fell for it. I forced her down on the back seat. She was scared. He was also arrested for that incident, though the case never came to fruition.
They do mention like, oh, if he would have actually spent time for these rapes, how long he probably would have been out anyways. But it's still, maybe it would have.
Yeah, but wait till you see this journal.
Yeah, this journal's crazy.
I mean,
yeah,
there's quite a bit.
There's a lot.
There's quite a few entries, we'll say.
Yes, of different, and to say, and he says that no, they're just my fantasies. They're my dream journals. They're just fantasies of a boy talking. But
if you're having those kind of fantasies, then you still need help.
There's something wrong.
You still need help.
Yeah.
Sorry. It was different at that time, the woman said, speaking on condition of anonymity because she had not told her family of the ordeal. It was still your own fault. The woman, who at the time was a graduate student at the University of California, Berkeley, said in dealing with police, she felt alone and like she was the one they were accusing. She said that on the day she was assaulted at age 24, she had worked in Oakland and was waiting for a bus to return home when a stranger offered her a ride, which she accepted against her better judgment. I was just sitting naively at a bus stop, she said. I knew lots of women in that era who were hitchhiking. I would never do that. The woman said she got the license plate number of the car and told the police. She remembered 2 officers later interrogated her about the rape in a tiny room. You were just trying to make your boyfriend jealous, she said the police told her. They talked to him, and the only thing I knew was that he left town. One journal entry set in London read, Outside the front door, I overpowered her and ravaged her. I couldn't help myself. Another entry read, girl in North Buffalo Woods. She was real pretty. Had to knock her out first.
Had to knock her out first. Okay.
Yeah, like, I don't know.
I just feel like just these alone.
Yeah, they're
Guilty.
very disturbing.
Yeah.
If you can, like, even if you're just saying this is your fantasy.
Yeah.
No, not okay.
Not right in the head.
The last entry on the list made reference to a girl from Marysville with cemetery written next to it. Tracy Tafoya had been dumped next to Marysville Cemetery near Naso's home. Naso also wrote descriptions of rapes and sexual assaults in the journal as far back as the 1950s. Diary excerpts show how he stalked and sexually assaulted his victims and then photographed them in sexual poses alongside mannequin parts. In fact, it was through Naso's collection of photographs and diaries seized by the police that alerted Thaddeus and Margaret, his neighbors back in San Francisco in the 80s, to Naso's chilling alleged interest in Margaret. Along with the 4 murdered victims on the list was Margaret Prisco's name. Margaret was lucky. She might have avoided a violent fate. Police believe he's connected to at least 6 other murders.
So police believe that he's connected to other murders, and not all of them have the first initial, last initial. So they think that it's just by coincidence that these were the ones that they're getting him on, but it's not necessarily that's how he found them, stalked them. He didn't do it based on their names. That's what they're guessing, because he's had so many other. And we're going to talk about one possible victim is Sara Dylan. So it might have been difficult to find a bigger Bob Dylan fan than Sara Dylan. Not his former wife, but a fan so devoted, the woman legally changed her name from Renee Shapiro and hitchhiked worldwide to follow his tours.
What?
She changed her name. Yes, she did.
Oh my God.
She loved him so much.
Wow.
So she was last seen alive at a Bob Dylan concert in Hawaii in 1992. Through the help of her biological mother's DNA, police in 1998 were able to match her DNA to a skull found in Nevada County. Dylan's passport and driver's license were also found in the safe deposit box in Reno belonging to Naso. So that was from the keys that he wanted them to go run. So he had passports and IDs of multiple women.
Yeah.
But this is one where they've actually found a skull. And so she was found near Nevada County. Though Naso was not formally charged with Dylan's murder, she is one of the many cold cases that authorities across the county revisit. Naso was arrested, jailed for probation violations, and spent the next year incarcerated in a Nevada jail. After his arrest was announced, another woman, Royce Talkington, came forward and told Fox Reno News that she had worked beside him at a swap meet. There she said he had arrived with a brown van and sold women's lingerie out of the back of the van. How creepy is that? And so not only is he stealing the lingerie from stores, he's reselling them.
Selling it at the swap meet.
He's stealing them to sell them at the swap meet. That's the only way I can put those two together. Like, I know.
I mean, if you're going to go to the swap meet to buy lingerie, you should probably...
Yeah.
Probably just not do it.
We don't know where it's coming
just
from.
Just don't do it.
He had invited her to model some of the lingerie. Royce said, "No way. Stay away from me. I don't want anything to do with you anymore," because it really triggered something inside that said, "Danger, danger, stay away from this guy." Smart cookie.
Yeah.
The police spent the year conducting interviews with neighbors and other people in the area. Neighbors painted a picture of a paranoid, hot-tempered man who kept to himself and never said hello. He was the picture-perfect cliche of a serial killer, a recluse who outdid other recluses. He was just a weirdo, one neighbor told the Contra Costa Times. We kept away from him. He made my hair stand on end. I never really seen the guy, a woman named Summer who lived near him in Nevada said. He'd drive his pickup to his backyard and never would say hi. We know all the neighbors here except him. Gwendolyn Friend was the neighbor of Naso's ex-wife, Judith. Even though he would frequently visit his ex-wife, the Contra Costa Times wrote, Friend thought he was odd because he never looked her in the eye when they spoke. Still being odd and weird doesn't mean that someone is a murderer, she said. That was strange, but never in my wildest dreams did I think he would pop up on TV as a serial killer. Isn't
Very
that
true.
crazy though? I mean, yeah, we hear that a lot
Very true.
too. Like, you just never
You
put it
can
that far.
be well, and like, you know, a lot of times when people are suspects, they look at the stuff that they do, and I'm like, okay, like they can do all this weird stuff, but that doesn't make them a serial killer. It doesn't make them a murderer. It doesn't, you know, and it sucks because you have to think like that.
Yeah.
Especially if you're like on jury duty or something like that. Like, you have to get in that frame of mind, like beyond a reasonable doubt. Like,
not just those things, but well, of course, with him, it's those things and the journal and the pictures and the items on him. He is so. In San Francisco, he was remembered vividly by his neighbors. It was in his eyes, Sergio Rango told the San Francisco Chronicle, who uncovered Naso's alleged stalking of a couple in a building he lived in. He was older, his hair had turned white, but you can't forget a guy like him. He was berserk. He was a very lonely man. When Joe drank, he became bellicose. I gave him a few dollars every now and then, not because I liked him, but because I didn't want him to get mad at me. His behavior earned him the nickname Crazy Joe. In the course of a multi-agency, multi-state investigation, police found a treasure trove of information, which led to his indictment for the murder of the 4 California women. The day he was to be released from the Nevada jail in South Lake Tahoe, police arrested him on the murder charges nearly a year to the date. He was transferred to Marin County, the site of the first victim, Roxene Roggasch.
On January 10th, 1977, 18-year-old Roxane was found dead, dumped near Fairfax, California. After receiving an anonymous phone call, the police drove to the road where the tipster's car had stalled and found the petite, freckled redhead buried face down underneath some desert brush. Pantyhose were wrapped around her neck and her feet were bound. Police concluded she'd been dead for less than a day. At first, the police looked to the most obvious solution, as Roxane had been suspected of working as a prostitute. Although her family denied any knowledge of that, police looked closely at a man who was alleged to have been a pimp in the area, who was accused of assault by a woman who had claimed to have worked with Roxane. But when that didn't pan out, the trail and the case went cold. Years later, a DNA test on the pantyhose left around her neck found DNA that matched Naso's ex-wife, Judith. Naso said that the evidence only showed he had sex with Roxane. He said there was no proof that he killed her and that prosecutors had no way of knowing who put the pantyhose around her neck. That's true.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
If you just look at that aspect of it, that's correct.
Yeah, and there's a lot of like him addressing it, because when the trial first started, he first represented himself until later on in the trial. But they actually said he was actually a pretty intelligent man who carried himself very well when the trial started out and he started representing himself. So a lot of this is his firsthand account because he was able to defend himself kind of while he was cross-examining and stuff like that. It was just so bizarre.
Yeah, it's just very bizarre.
Yeah. But
the next year, another young woman was found dead. In 1978, Carmen Colon was found in Port Costa, 30 miles away. She was only 22 years old. A partial foreign DNA profile was obtained from Carmen's fingernail clippings. Naso was included in the DNA profile as a possible match. Then there was a lull in the killings connected to Naso. It wasn't until over 15 years later that another woman was murdered, whom the authorities later linked to him. In 1993, Pamela Parsons, 38, a waitress who worked not very far from where Naso lived, was found dead in Yuba County. In the case of Pamela, the police cited photos of her found in one of the safe deposit boxes and newspaper clippings regarding her death. In addition to the photos, numerous writings, logs, and a calendar from 1993 detailing his daily activity related to her were found inside his residence. He sold photos he'd taken of Pamela at a flea market only 1.5 miles from where her body was found. Naso only admitted knowing Pamela, who modeled for him once. He said, "I'm sorry about her demise, but I didn't do it." He said he picked her up on the side of the road and took her to his house. She offered sex, but he only took glamour pictures.
From a guy who writes a journal about all these dream fantasies, you see this man turning down sex?
No.
Thank you.
No. Thank you. No, thank you. A year later in 1994, Tracy Tafoya, 31, was found dead, also in Yuba County. She had been drugged, raped, and tossed in a cemetery. It was estimated that she had been dead a week before her body was found. Naso lived on Cooper Avenue in Yuba City during this time. In all cases, the women were found strangled and dumped naked in rural areas. They all reportedly either had problems with drugs and alcohol or they were prostitutes. The most chilling similarity among the victims, though, was their unique names. All 4 women who were killed had alliterative initials. Their first and last name began with the same letter. This detail further piqued the interest of investigators because a few years earlier, another string of murders had occurred in Rochester, New York, where Naso was born, and those victims had also had the same first letters of the first and last name. Those murders had been dubbed the double initial killings or the alphabet murders. In the mid-70s in Rochester, New York, 3 preteens were killed. Like Naso's alleged victims, the 3 girls had first and last names that started with the same letter. One of them, Carmen Colon, even had the same name as one of Naso's alleged victims. When Naso's arrest was made public, the cold case detectives in New York cracked open their old files to see if anything squared up. But it was determined that though there was a similarity in the names of the victims, little else was the same. For one thing, the women connected to the Naso case were much older and were mostly prostitutes. The victims in the original double initial killings were young. Carmen Colon, Michelle Manza, Wanda Walkowitz were all between 10 and 12 years old. That they were from the same area where Naso lived for a spell, and during that same time period, he was back visiting relatives, seemed to be a coincidence. Police ruled Naso out when DNA from the California killings didn't match the DNA left on Wanda Walkowitz. After weeks of not entering a plea, on May 27, 2011, Naso finally entered one not guilty. He originally wanted to represent himself in court, but decided later on to obtain an attorney. On November 22, 2013, Naso was sentenced to death. However, California has not put anyone to death since January 17, 2006, so it's not likely that Naso will see the inside of the death chamber.
Because I think federally, like in 2006, like across the board, the nation, the federal government put a stop to the death penalty. And then when it came back in 2019, when they brought that up, or when they took that back, I don't even know how to say. I don't know how to speak, and we all know that. But when they reinstated it, or said hey, yeah, we can the nation could do the death penalty again. It's up to the states. Then California Governor Newsom said, "Hold up, we're not going to be doing that."
Yeah.
So we haven't.
Then they all just get basically
life.
Yeah.
Right now they're serving life. I think I was reading something where they were looking at a new way, because they were saying that the death chamber wasn't humane. So they were looking at
the death chamber.
What's it called? Didn't you say that
doesn't sound humane?
What did you say? Right there, because I did write death chamber. The Naso will see the inside of the death chamber. You read that too. That was... You didn't even notice it when you were reading?
Did you write that, or was
wrote that? No, I wrote it because I didn't know what it's called. What is it called? The death chamber. It's not called a death chamber?
I don't think so.
The death penalty box.
I could be wrong.
Well, anyways, so they're looking at injection or something. Lethal injection, like something that's quick, but I would think the lethal injection is pretty quick and humane.
It's called an execution chamber.
Oh, okay. Same thing. Death chamber, execution chamber.
It's a room or chamber in which capital punishment is carried out.
Oh, okay. There we go. See? So Mr. Naso. A lot of this information was gathered through multiple resources, I'm telling you, but they had a lot on him because of the fact that he tried to represent himself.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of excuses he made. He was saying like, hey, you know, like I said before, you know, those are my dream journals. Hey, you can't prove that I killed anybody just off that. I mean, he was doing objections and, you know, cross-examinations. He was.
It's never a good idea to represent yourself in court.
I would say it's probably not.
Especially something like this.
And apparently, I mean, they sentenced him to death. It's just that, and I think there's like over 700 right now in California sitting on death row. But, you know, they're most likely not going to be put to death. So,
well, thank you for listening.
Yeah, thank you for joining us this week.
Yes, if you would like to follow us on social media, we're on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, everything at 50 States of Madness. You can check out our merch at 50statesofmadness.bigcartel.com.
Yes.
Hoodie season is
right around the corner.
If
not already here in some parts of the United States.
And we got
50
good
States of Madness
hoodies.
Yeah, they're very, very soft and very nice. So
they're lightweight, but they're very cozy.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And then if you're not a hoodie person, we have a bunch of other stuff too.
Yeah, check us out.
So make sure and check it out.
Thank you.
And if you've noticed, our intro has changed. Our picture has changed. That is because we are now in season 2. So if you have any suggestions for if you would like us to do,
my glasses got away from me.
you would
Same
like
back channel.
Yeah, if you would like us to do talk about any specific cases or hauntings or whatever the case may be. I know a lot of you have messaged and said to do that because, you know, it's October and you guys wanted like some spooky stuff. So, unfortunately, we're probably not going to be able to do that in October because October is already halfway over. And, but we will, you know, we'll get there.
I'll come without makeup next week. It'll be spooky.
Just watched last week's episode.
Spooky.
It's really spooky.
My dance moves, spooky.
Yeah. But we'll get there for sure. So just, we love your comments.
Yes.
Make sure and comment.
Please.
Shout out to Marie. Now that I know her name, I talk about her a lot on here. She always comments on our videos. She's very well versed in a lot of these cases, and she always comments and has a lot of information. And I just found out her name. So her name is Marie. So I apologize all the times that I've said, like, I don't remember her name. So I told her I'm not going to forget her name because my middle name is Marie. So I won't forget her name. So thank you, Marie. So yeah, I don't know. I don't have anything else. Do you?
Nope. Have a safe week.
All right. We'll see you next week.
Bye.